It's Tuesday, September 3rd, 2013. I'm Paul Joseph Watson. This is Infowars Nightly News.
Tonight, Syria's chemical weapons turn out to be sodium fluoride, the same used in the U.S. water supply. Then, as the military revolts against Obama, the mainstream media claims it's nothing but a hoax. And even Rush Limbaugh thinks the Syrian conflict could be a frame job.
Looking here at a frame job.
Alex Jones reports. That's next on the Infowars Nightly News.
And you better pray to God they don't get this through.
Top story tonight, Obama's Syria attack resolution authorizes boots on the ground. President Obama today claimed that there would be no US troops in Syria, telling reporters, this is not Iraq, this is not Afghanistan. However, Harvard Law School professor Jack Goldsmith warns that the White House's draft resolution for military intervention, which Congress is set to vote on, of course, next week, is so broad that it would authorize boots on the ground as well as regime change and open-ended war throughout the entire region. The proposed AUMF focuses on Syrian WMD, but is otherwise very broad. It authorizes the president to use any element of the US armed forces and any method of force, writes Goldsmith. The AUMF also contains no time limit for when this mandate expires without further congressional approval. So it creates this open-ended war that would, quote, permit the president to use military force against any target anywhere in the world, including Iran or Lebanon, as long as the president, in his discretion, determines that the target has a connection to WMD and the Syrian war. So remember that Kerry and other officials in the State Department have made it clear that if Congress votes no, Obama is going to go ahead and order the attack anyway. Obama was again asked that question today, he kind of evaded it. But as we've seen with the wider war on terror, everything that Congress green lights, whether domestically or in the context of foreign affairs, inevitably gets used for far broader intentions than it was originally justified for. So the question remains, of course, is Obama using this congressional vote as an exit strategy for his potentially embarrassing step back with his red line rhetoric? Or, as Obama himself and other State Department officials have indicated, does Congress even matter since the decision to attack Syria has already been made anyway? And The Hill published an article today which indicates, in fact, that Congress will vote no on military intervention in Syria. At the current, they did an estimation of the nays and the yeses in Congress, coming up about 31 Congress members are going to vote no compared to 13. That's confirmed. The rest are undecided. So will we see another convenient attack in the meantime to sway that vote? It remains to be seen. Moving on, MSN claims military revolt against Obama a hoax. The mainstream media has responded against Barack Obama's plan to attack Syria by claiming that the viral "I didn't join Twitter" trend is a hoax invented by pro-Assad hackers. So, you know, despite the fact we've seen numerous veterans and active duty soldiers holding up signs on Twitter expressing their vehement opposition to military intervention in Syria, in addition to the tweets, of course, the plethora of tweets received by Congressman Justin Amash making the same sentiments, the International Business Times came out with an article today and basically said that the photos, the tweets, were the work of Syrian hackers, quote, impersonating US military personnel. Of course, on the face of it, that's completely ludicrous. The original image of the naval officer expressing his image to the attack on Syria, which, of course, we featured on Sunday, has been verified. We know his name. We know that he's an active duty petty naval officer. And then you have, of course, all the other images of veterans and current active duty military personnel doing the same thing. But what I'm seeing from this now is actually Obama apologists hijacking this meme in order to claim that those in the military who oppose the attack on Syria are cowards. That's right. That's what they're saying at the moment, trying to hijack this meme. You know, is it cowardly to put your whole career on the line because you feel so strongly about an issue as these active duty and military veterans have done? Is it cowardly to oppose fighting on the side of terrorists who have killed their friends in Iraq? And, you know, if this became part of the national debate, then actually derail the attack on Syria. There's obviously a huge public interest element to this story. It's gone viral on Twitter and Facebook. Yet, just as last week's story about the rebels in Ghouta admitting that they were responsible for the chemical weapons incident, this has received virtually no mainstream media coverage whatsoever. So again, we see the primary control mechanism of the corporate media at work, which is censorship via omission. Nobody's covered this apart from Infowars and, of course, Russian state media, seemingly the pioneers of questioning interesting media, whereas the likes of CNN, ABC, USA Today, the lot of them completely ignore it. So we're going to keep up the pressure. And if you're active duty military, we're calling on you to send your I didn't join images to real Alex Jones on Twitter, and we'll continue to try and force the media to cover this. But a lot of Obama apologists now trying to hijack the meme, claiming that everybody who opposes the attack on Syria who is in the military are cowards, like they're the ultimate patriots. Israel claims joint US missile launch in Mediterranean for target practice. This is out Russia Today. Israel says it's carried out a joint US missile launch in the Mediterranean, having earlier claimed ignorance. Russian radars detected 2 ballistic rockets fired in the region on Tuesday, sparking widespread speculation over who was behind the launch. So first of all, the US and Israel are doing missile tests in the most tension-fraught region of the world right now, firing missiles in the direction, threatening to provoke a war. It's a dangerous act of provocation, and it should be condemned. You know, imagine if Syria fired missiles in the direction of Israel. Everyone would be completely frothing out how irresponsible it was, how much of a dangerous escalation it was, and holding it up as another reason to topple Assad. But when Israel does it, they get a free pass. You know, look at how everybody freaked out when North Korea last tested their missiles. So again, it's a double standard, a complete act of provocation, but Israel gets a free pass when they do it. But secondly, it was interesting to watch the denials, because at first Israel came out they had anything to do with it, shortly followed by the US, who also denied any involvement in this incident. Of course, later, Israel acknowledged that they were behind the ballistic missile test with technical support from the US Defense Department. So again, you know, you can tell they're lying because their lips are moving. But again, it's another dangerous provocation. And it seems to me, and this is the speculation, that the delay in admitting that they were behind it was a means of testing what Syria's response would be if that was a real attack, which of course could happen as soon as next week. So they're playing games out there in the Mediterranean, the most tension-fraught region of the world, on the eve of war, testing missiles, potentially provoking war. Compare that to what would have happened if Syria did the same thing. First Syria rebels armed and trained by CIA on way to battlefield, reports The Telegraph. The first cell of Syrian rebels trained and armed by the CIA is making its way to the battlefield, President Barack Obama has reportedly told senators. During a meeting at the White House, the president assured Senator John McCain that after months of delay, the US was meeting its commitment to back moderate of the opposition. So you mean the moderate elements of the opposition who publicly swore allegiance to Jabhat al-Nusra, who in turn publicly swore allegiance to al-Qaeda terrorists. Talking about those kind of moderates. You're talking about the moderate elements who have videos up on YouTube proudly merging with Jabhat al-Nusra terrorists in Aleppo, merging with the same group that killed US troops in Iraq. Or do you mean the moderate elements of the opposition who cut people's internal organs out and eat them on camera? You're talking about those moderates. Or the moderates who sing the praises of Osama bin Laden, the moderates who behead babies, the moderates who force children to behead other people, the moderates who slaughter Christians and pillage their church in Syria. These are the kind of moderates we're talking about. And now the CIA has sent 50 basically al-Qaeda terrorists that they trained in Jordan to join the other terrorists to take the opportune moment to overtake all the military bases when they launch the attack next week. And it's all paid for with your taxpayer dollars. Moving on. Syria's chemical weapons turn out to be sodium fluoride used in the US water supply. This is Mike Adams, nationalnews.com. And of course, this is an issue we first drew attention to on Sunday when it first came out. It concerns these shipments of chemical weapons ingredients which were sent by a British company to Syria. Of course, the UK government denies involvement, just as they denied giving Saddam Hussein the chemical weapons. But what were in these chemical weapons ingredients? Sodium fluoride and potassium fluoride. The same ingredients that our health authorities put in our water, food, and toothpaste. So as Mike Adams documents in this article, sodium fluoride is an ingredient for chemical weapons, and you're ingesting it on a daily basis. Next up, New York Times cuts references to AIPAC in Syria Debate. The New York Times had an article in which they discussed the Israeli lobby's influence on the congressional authorization to attack Syria, and they cut out 2 whole paragraphs that referred to AIPAC as the 800-pound gorilla. This was the key excerpt that was cut from the article. Quote, administration officials say the influential pro-Israel lobby group AIPAC was already at work for pressing military action against the government of Assad. And it went on to say that these Obama administration officials, insiders, are talking about AIPAC as the 800-pound gorilla in the room because obviously they're lobbying Congress to support this attack on Syria. So this passage was removed from the New York Times article, which most likely in alliance with AIPAC does not want the American people to know that their Congress members are being aggressively pressured by the Israeli lobby to greenlight the attack on Syria next week. Moving on to other news, Harvard research shows guns don't kill people, people kill people. This is out of Zero Hedge. In an inconvenient truth moment for the anti-gun lobby, Harvard's Don Cates and Gary Mauser have found that there is, in fact, a, quote, negative correlation between violence and gun ownership. Quote, where firearms are most dense, violent crimes are lowest. And where guns are least dense, violent crime rates are highest. And they concluded in this study that the burden of proof rests on the more guns equal more death and fewer guns equal less death mantra, especially since they argue public policy ought to be based on that mantra. But those correlations are not observed when a large number of nations are compared across the world. So yet another detailed, exhaustive study, academic study out of Harvard proving more guns, less crime. I think it's safe to say that we've won the Second Amendment debate until the likes of Piers Morgan, of course, exploit another mass shooting incident. But you can go and read the full academic study proving that an armed population reduces crime at prisonplanet.com. Quote of the day comes from Charles Ruff. Impeachment is not a remedy for private wrongs. It's a method of removing someone whose continued presence in office would cause grave danger to the nation. Going to go to break now, but stick around because with even Rush Limbaugh now coming out and saying he suspects Obama conspired with Al-Qaeda to frame Bashar al-Assad, Alex Jones has a special report on the evidence for a false flag in Syria and the build-up to war. So stay around for that. Then after the show, we've got part 2 of Leanne McAdoo's interview with Quinn Aker about the recent SWAT raid he suffered and educating Americans how they can get informed on their rights and stand up for their liberties in the face of oppression. So stay tuned for that.
Now you can watch Alex Jones live at Infowars.com/show.
You'll find links to all of our content there and a free 15-day trial for Prison Planet TV.
You can also browse the network, the Infowars Nightly News,
and over 60 movies and documentaries all together in one place.
You can watch the Alex Jones radio show live as it happened.
So check it out, Infowars.com/show.
Many anthropologists and archaeologists believe that before man even discovered the power to harness and use fire, we were involved in agrarian activities. That is, taking the seeds of plants and then replanting them to produce more. The very foundation of our modern civilization and human culture is centered around the planting and cultivation of edible plants.
Here are some of the amazing deals at InfoWars Seed Center at InfoWarsShop.com. The Survival Seed Vault by My Patriot Supply features only the finest survival heirloom seeds for a robust and hardy garden, even in the toughest times. We also have starter varieties of the deluxe seed packages for fruit, salad, salsa, peppers, medical herbs, and more.
Go to the Infowars Seed Center at InfoWarsShop.com.
And remember, the revolution against tyranny is growing. And welcome back to this extremely important September 3rd, Tuesday edition of Infowars Nightly News. Rush Limbaugh, undoubtedly the largest media presence in the United States with 20+ million listeners a week. Love him or hate him, he's about as big as it gets on the media landscape, came out today and said that the evidence is pointing towards a false flag staged terror attack by the al-Qaeda forces so that the Obama administration and NATO have a pretext to come in and militarily back them up with air power. This is incredible because Rush Limbaugh joins Pat Buchanan, Ron Paul, Rand Paul, and of course myself and many others, Dr. Jerome Corsi of WorldNet Daily, Dr. Paul Craig Roberts of the Treasury Department in the Reagan administration, and Vladimir Putin of Russia, and many of the members of the British Parliament. This is amazing. In saying that the evidence is overwhelming that the Syrian rebels staged the chemical attacks. There's even videos that we've been covering the last week and a half since this tragedy happened, where the rebels are loading the chemical weapons and screaming Allah Akbar as they fire them. The Syrian rebels were caught earlier this year and last year in Turkey with chemical weapons they were trying to smuggle across the border. You're like, well, if Turkey's backing the rebels, why would they bust them? Because the general police and military aren't involved in staging a chemical attack. They just know people are trying to sneak across the border with a weapon. They check them, and then it gets covered up. So we know, ladies and gentlemen, that all evidence points towards this, and they have the motive. Why would Assad, if he's told by Obama, oh, by the way, if there's a chemical attack out of the blue, we're going to invade you? And Assad's like, I didn't do it, the rebels did it. Why would I target random civilians with this? It's against common sense. And what you've got is a 2.5-year proxy war, plus, it's almost 3 years, it'll be 3 years in December, of the West funding hundreds of millions of dollars per quarter. It's in the billions of dollars now to fund and train rebels in Jordan, in Iraq, in Turkey, in other areas, to inject them into Syria, trying to overthrow that country. And CNN calls the al-Qaeda forces blowing up churches, murdering people, activists and protesters. Just like when they tried to blow up a ship in the Suez Canal in Egypt today, they were called demonstrators. And it was like, oh, how dare the Egyptian army fire rockets at them from helicopters. And so now you have the U.S. military revolting against this. And I've told you, the people are not buying this anymore. 9% in last week's Reuters poll, 9% support this military attack Obama's trying to push. That's 91% are against it. So it's a total collapse level event. And historically, if you're an empire, but you have a somewhat moral population who isn't just completely bloodthirsty, you tell them, hey, we're going to go invade this neighbor because they attacked us. They did something. Oh, the Spanish blew up the Maine to get us into the war 1898. Turned out that was staged. Or the Vietnamese attacked our ships in the Gulf of Tonkin, declassified 6 years ago. That was staged. Or 1953, the coup in Iran. Turned out that was staged. This has all been declassified. People are now aware of this template that's run over and over again, not just by us. The Russian government's been caught staging stuff. The Nazis got caught staging stuff. Operation Himmler, blowing up their own military bases at Gleiwitz and other areas to then say Poland had attacked. Poland had a World War I or pre-World War I army with horses up against the Luftwaffe and Panzer tanks. They didn't start a fight. It'd be like a guy that weighs 50 pounds and can't walk starting a fight with a top, UFC fighter in their prime, or starting a fight with somebody like Mike Tyson in his prime. It's absolutely ridiculous. And so people are seeing through it. And the fact that you've got Rush Limbaugh coming out now and saying he didn't want to look at this, he couldn't believe it, but the evidence is there, is amazing. So first tonight, I wanted to look at what Pat Buchanan and Ron Paul have said. And then we're going to go to the new clip from today of Rush Limbaugh. And then I have bombshell, really scary news from our sources that is going to be breaking right about the time the show ends tonight. Dealing with nuclear weapons that were supposedly not even at the base under treaties, being brought out of mothballs and from the B-1 base in West Texas and transferred to the East Coast to be loaded on other aircraft to be deployed against Russia. This is just unprecedented. We've confirmed all the B-2 bombers stationed in Missouri last week took off for Europe and that theater, and that U.S. aircraft have been massing in the region. And Obama said Saturday in a speech, our assets are in place in his military. How creepy is that? And we have high-level Russian media sources who literally say the government is in bunkers right now and the Russians are preparing for nuclear war and have never been this freaked out, not even in the Cold War. The Russians have their fingers on the launch buttons. They've massed hundreds of thousands of troops on their border. This is incredible, ladies and gentlemen. And our government is siding with al-Qaeda. This is biblical stuff that's happening right now. Let's go ahead and go to Ron Paul just a few days ago on Neil Cavuto talking about false flag. Here it is.
I think it's a false flag. I think really, indeed. And nobody knows if indeed he was slaughtering people by the thousands, you know, with poison gas. You know, that's a different story, but that isn't the case.
And during the entire interview, he lays out the history of events being staged. So this idea of the self-inflicted wound, the staged event, the frame-up is becoming mainstream. And this really takes the tool of tyrants away to be able to manipulate populations with militant enthusiasm, with mob psychology, to attack whoever they want by staging events. And of course, Pat Buchanan has also done several interviews on the McLaughlin Group and with Newsmax, saying basically the same thing. Here's that clip.
I would not understand or comprehend that Bashar al-Assad, no matter how bad a man he may be, would be so stupid as to order a chemical weapons attack on civilians in his own country, when the immediate consequence of which might be that he would be at war with the United States. So this reeks of a false flag operation.
And again, you can see all these clips in full, unedited, at Infowars.com and PrisonPlanet.com in the report that we have put out today. They're all linked at the bottom. Rush Limbaugh suspects Obama conspired with al-Qaeda to frame Bashar al-Assad. Absolutely sensational information. And before we play this Rush Limbaugh clip, I just want to point out, this is the fall of the false flag. Because when they staged the underwear bombing, it came out immediately that the CIA had put the drugged Muttalib on the plane. When they stage other events now, it's coming out very, very quickly, even in the New York Times, that almost every provocateur event is the FBI finding a mentally ill, low IQ person and commanding them as their Islamic leader, you know, to build a bomb, to blow up the Christmas tree display in Portland, Oregon, or whatever the case may be. People are really understanding that the establishment is staging events, provocateuring events, and opening the door for real extremists who are out there to attack us as a pretext to radically re-engineer and change our culture from an open, free society, laissez-faire, true libertarianism in the Dutch New York model, to this authoritarian Orwellian system. But in closing, here is the historic Rush Limbaugh piece from today. And I do again suggest you go to Infowars.com and watch the entire 15-minute segment and listen to it, because he really gives the whole background story of his awakening to this And it's important to get that context. But in the interest of time, here's just a short clip of that compiled by our own Jakari Jackson.
There's a growing volume of new evidence from numerous sources in the Middle East, mostly affiliated with the Syrian opposition and its sponsors and supporters, which makes a very strong case based on solid circumstantial evidence that the August 21st, 2013 chemical strike in the Damascus suburbs was indeed a premeditated provocation. It looks like there was U.S. intel involvement dating a week before the alleged chemical weapons attack in meetings that were anticipating a war-changing event. So we could be looking here at a frame job. Available data puts the horror in a different and disturbing light, meaning it's not Bashar doing the horrible things. It's the rebels nerve-gassing themselves, framing Bashar, setting him up so that the al-Qaeda guys win, and then we end up on the side of al-Qaeda. And you've heard that being speculated about. If indeed this is a frame job, look at how well it's being run. I'm not attaching any weight in this to what they have said. It just, to me, it's coincidental. On Saturday, I got these two notes from friends of mine who've done business in the Middle East, in Syria. Just do not think that they know Assad. They can't not believe that he would do this.
Well, that basically concludes this edition of Infowars Nightly News. Great job of the crew and all of you out there that are subscribers to PrisonPlanet.tv and the Nightly News. You make all this possible. So from the bottom of my heart, thank you for your support. We couldn't do the historical things we're doing without you. When the main news show ends for TV viewers on PrisonPlanet.tv, and we have an expanded interview with Leanne McAdoo and a really interesting fellow on knowing your rights here in America. So that's coming up at the end of the news tonight. It's evenings like this that I do go home and you know, tuck my children in twice and basically kiss them on the forehead maybe 2 or 3 times, because we are on the verge of what could become World War III. World War III is beginning to start. That doesn't mean it has to happen. And we've had at least 3 other cases where World War III almost happened with the Russians. The problem is the West is not even negotiating with Russia. They're not even negotiating with al-Assad. They are not even trying to actually fix things. They want global crisis. And I look at the bankers that run the New World Order, like the former head of Goldman Sachs, John Corzine. They're mentally ill. They're very intelligent. They're in charge. They have criminal minds that burn with dominant desire. But they don't have wisdom. They have knowledge. They don't have wisdom. And they just are so used to always winning, they think they're invincible. And pride goes before a fall. Like Napoleon turning east into Russia, Hitler turning east into Russia. That's where empires really go to die. And if the Russians have shown anything for all their problems, they will not back down in the final equation. They've been backing down on incremental things for a long time. In fact, to properly quantify that from my study of history, the Russians will back down until they're cornered. But if you corner them, they will not let you just go ahead and completely dominate them. And the globalists have their underground bunkers, all of it. They think they're invincible. They're not. And John Corzine made 40-to-1 bets with other people's money and lost. And I guess he did the right thing because he's not facing criminal prosecution. And why do I bring that up so often? The only reason Bernie Madoff is in prison is because he stole $100 billion, roughly, of other elitist money. That's the only reason. If he would have stole from the general public, he'd have been fine. These people are out of control. They've got to run everything. That's why they want Agenda 21 here, to shut down all the industry that they don't control. They're mafia. And they're not going to stop. So many people think you appease bullies and that they're going to then somehow be nice to you. No. The bully goes for the guy that rolls over every time. Even if a bully's able to kick your butt, if you fight them hard, they're going to go, oh, that guy's trouble. I mean, I found raccoons in my garage, and I might be able to actually get a hold of one and kill one, but I'm going to have bites all over me, scratches all over me. That's why big dogs won't mess with a raccoon usually, because they know a raccoon will absolutely attack them. Free people will fight back. Slaves are slaves because they don't fight back, ladies and gentlemen. They roll over. They're intimidated. They give in. And we need to stop acting like slaves and realize how much trouble we're in, folks. And sections of the power structure that are not completely delusional and sociopathic or psychopathic, you can read the writing on the wall. You know history. The ruling class we've got is real bad. They're Nero-esque. They're Caligula-like. They're very Hitlerian. And those aren't just names I throw around. Study those figures and then look at the ruling class we have. If you study psychology and criminology, subconsciously, they still have human wiring, even though at higher brain functions, they're psychopathic or sociopathic, bare minimum. And so their subconscious wants to destroy them. Their subconscious wants them to be caught. Their subconscious wants them to commit suicide, basically. But at a conscious level or even a spiritual level, the spirit driving them, the ghost in the machine manipulating them, if you believe in spirituality, if you believe in God and the devil, the entities driving the bus don't care. They want to drive it over the edge of the cliff. But their basic human wiring wants them to get caught, to stop them. That's why they're so reckless. Because at a subconscious level, they think if they do crazier and crazier things, they'll get caught and stopped. And that may have worked 1,000 years ago. It doesn't work now because they got nuclear weapons. They must be stopped. We're going to have to stop them. All right, I've gone long enough. Please support us. Become PrisonPlanet.tv members. If you have a membership, 11 people can log in simultaneously with the same username passcode. Share that with friends and family. Have viewing parties. Get Infowars magazine at cost in groups of 10 up to 100 in bulk, where we expose the authoritarianism of political correctness. Thou shalt not have any gods above the state. Or get a year subscription. Give it as gifts. Buy the Pro Pure water filters discounted with promo code WATER. Go to the Seed Center, the books, the T-shirts, the films. All of it is the best information, the best products at the best prices. And then it also funds our operation. So you're buying war bonds in the literal Republic defense system, the human defense system. That's what we are, is a small part of that. Picture the liberty movement as a composite eye, like a dragonfly's eye. Hundreds of these eyes. But imagine them as fists. All of us are fists fighting the globalists. And when you fund us, when you spread the word about what we're doing, when you support us, it allows us to do what we've been doing. So in the face of this tyranny, we're going in through and beyond. Say your prayers. Pray for peace. Pray for sanity. Pray for a reprieve, just like Nineveh got. But in the final equation, get yourself right with God, because we could see World War III, which we know then, if you believe the Bible, brings in Antichrist. This may just be a test for that, because there are many Antichrists that have the same model. They try to build the same system, just like a crustacean will create the same shell, or a species of spider will spin the same type of web. The globalists have the same signature. So if you truly understand the Bible, prophecy, but also history, you understand that tyrannies build the same model. It just gets more sophisticated, more evil each time. So we don't know if this is it, but it does follow the Bible exactly, because it's the devil and his plan with God with his plan. And again, if you don't believe in God, that's fine, but why is it all following exactly what the Bible said? Because there are more things going on in heaven and earth that are in all these yuppie, socialist, anti-human, transhuman, atheist stuff. There's a lot of going on that isn't in your Star Trek episodes, I will assure you. All right, that's it for this transmission. We'll see you back, Lord willing, tomorrow night, 7 o'clock Central, Infowars Nightly News.
Now you can watch The Alex Jones Show live as it happens at Infowars.com/show.
You'll find links to all of our content there and a free 15-day trial for Prison Planet TV.
More than 60 movies and documentaries all in one place at Infowars.com/show. earlier in the week, we were speaking with Quinn Aker. His property, the Garden of Eden, was the subject of a SWAT raid. They attempted to violate his property rights, saying that he was growing a marijuana factory there. And basically, because he was someone that knew his constitutional rights and how to apply them, he was able to turn the law back around and establish it how it should be, for the people, by the people. Okay, Quinn, so let's get into how people can empower themselves and actually apply the laws that are there and meant to protect them.
You know, it's really sad. It's really sad what the current state of affairs have come to, because, you know, back in the day when our country was so great, the reason why it was so great is because the government was there to serve and protect the people. And the government employees, the public servants, were there to be the servants of that, you know, of that. So, you know, the reason why our country was so great is because we had freedom. It was, you know, it was by the people, for the people. And, you know, in the beginning, government officials were, you know, they were like heroes. You know, back in the day, the sheriff was the, you know, the greatest man in the town, the person that everyone could trust and everyone could rely on. And, you know, back in the day, you know, the mayors, you know, were the people that everyone trusted the most and liked the most and had the best interest of the town or village or community at hand. You know, and the only thing that the government did was, you know, just serve and protect the people's rights. Well, now, you know, we're in a situation where basically the government's only job now is to tax, license, and regulate everything. And that's why now, you know, we've got obviously all of this blatant violation of rights happening all over the place. You know, we're not the only ones here. Mm-hmm. And that's part of why I started studying the law myself, is because it became very apparent to me that the government isn't actually following the law. And if I can't enforce the law, then it's definitely not going to be enforced for me. So I took it upon myself, and actually it used to be your responsibility. It used to be known that it's your responsibility to know the law. And when you became an 18-year-old man, if you couldn't, you know, handle yourself in court, you know, you weren't considered a man. And everyone knew what their rights were. Everyone knew how to handle themselves in court. You know, everyone knew the law, because that was just a natural part of living a free, responsible, honorable life. And now almost nobody knows the law. Right. And part of the reason why is because they've created this super complicated system of new law, which is basically all statutes and codes. So there's over 8 million laws in the United States, most of which are all just statutes and codes and, you know, regulations and all sorts of crap that doesn't actually apply to, you know, free men and women. It applies to fictional entities. It applies to businesses. It applies to beings in their official capacities. Exactly. So you had been fighting the jurisdiction and the city codes that they were trying to enforce on you since February, things that were applied to your property, and you were able to supersede those rules basically with the supreme law of the land, which is the Constitution. So what is some advice that you have to other homeowners that might be dealing with some of these same things? Right. Well, you know, there's a lot of really simple things that we can begin to research, that we can begin to ask questions about. You know, anytime you're going to deal with the law, you always want to be real sure. You know, you always want to be real careful. You don't, you know, the law is not designed to just throw around. You know, it's not like some, you know, backyard argument where you're like, what, huh? Yeah, what? You know, it's supposed to be very deliberate, very conscious, very concise. You know, so of course there's an in-depth spectrum to be aware of in regards to the law before you really want to, you know, begin utilizing it. But very simple stuff, which is that, for example, the supreme law of our land is the Constitution of the United States. And the Bill of Rights very specifically, you know, dictates that, you know, our rights, which we're born with. See, the Constitution doesn't give us rights, right? A free man can't be given rights, otherwise you're not free. They can be taken away. Right. See, the Constitution recognizes that we're born free. We're born with these rights. And the Constitution is simply the document which says these are what our rights are, and our government and our government officials are here to make sure that all of these rights are upheld at all points in time. And all government officials must swear an oath of office. And this is a really important part of the whole puzzle. because they swear under oath that they are going to serve and protect the people and the Constitution of the United States, which means that if at any point in time they do or are part of anything that is not upholding the people and or the constitutional rights, they're in violation of their oath of office, which is perjury and treason. So it's a really big deal. That used to be death. That used to be the death penalty. So it used to be very, very serious, and government officials took their oaths of office extremely serious. Now, most government officials don't even really know what their oath of office is. So oaths of office are really important, and that's one of the ways that you can allow government officials to know that that they have an oath of office, and that that they have sworn an oath to serve and protect you and the Constitution, which means that if they don't do that, they are guilty of perjury and or treason. So that's a really good way to let them know that you know how to hold them accountable, you know what your rights are. The Bill of Rights, like I said, a really important document, a really, really important document. Everyone should know what those are. We have a right to our spiritual path. There can be no dictated belief system, right? We all get to choose what we believe in or what we don't believe in. We all have a right to be secure in our property, in our person, in our effects. We have the right to free speech, the freedom of press, to bear arms. These are all really important rights of which our country was founded upon, and that's why we thrived. Contract law is also really important, and that's what we used to establish the power with the city. So we have our rights, and we've already claimed those. Our rights are inalienable. So all we have to do is establish on the record that that exists. See, most people, it gets a little complicated once we start going into this, but most people are actually living in their official capacities. They're living as corporate fictions. And the way I can prove that is that, on your driver's license or birth certificate or social security card, your name's going to be printed in all caps. And you only print corporate entities in all caps. If you know proper English grammar, you know that the proper spelling for a living, breathing man or woman is, first capital letter, lowercase, lowercase. So they've gotten people to operate in their official capacities. That's where all these 8 million laws start applying. They don't apply to living, breathing men, yet living, breathing men and women are acting like they do apply. So statutes and codes, for example, that's not real law. That's meant to govern business and, beings in their official capacities. So we sent them a lawful notification. In that lawful notification, we said, for the record, we know that we have these rights. We know that these rights are protected for us pursuant to the Constitution of the United States of America, which is the supreme law of the land. We also know that there are no laws, statutes, codes, ordinances, regulations that can supersede the supreme law. So what that means is that if there's a statute which, they do exist and they're written, so like a statute will say, you're not allowed to have tall grass. Well, if that gets in the way of my inherent inalienable rights, then it's void ab initio, because it can't supersede the supreme law. What we did is we sent this document saying that we have these rights, and unless you can prove that we don't, and unless you can prove that you have authority over these rights, and or you are aware of a law that supersedes these rights, which there isn't, there can't be, then under penalty of perjury, let us know what that is. So, we send them this lawful notification, and we claim on the record what our rights are, and then we give them the opportunity to rebut that. If you have lawful information, then we're happy to hear that. If you don't, then you agree that we are free, we can do whatever we want. So they tried to cite all sorts of statutes and codes and ordinances that interfere with our inalienable rights. And so what that means is that those statutes and codes and ordinances now are void ab initio, because they can't supersede our inalienable rights.
Right, and you were also saying that it's important to understand, I guess, sort of legalese rather than street slang. You can't really write a petition or anything like that, you have to use the proper terminology?
Right. You know, everything in law must be written in law and, you know, be defined by law and must conform to law. So, you know, there's a huge difference between a word that you think you know what it means and what most people would agree it means, and then what it actually means in court, or what it actually means in lawful terms. So there's actually a dictionary which is called Black's Law Dictionary. And the Black's Law Dictionary has the lawful definition, meaning the definition that's used in court or in lawful matters. And, you know, they've tricked the people very purposely with this in many ways. So the word understand, for example, is one of the most commonly used devastating words of power. The word understand, according to the Black's Law Dictionary, means I stand under and I agree. So the first thing that every, you know, judge is going to ask you when you go to, you know, court, say for a code compliance issue or a traffic ticket, they're going to say, do you understand the charges? And what people think that means is, do you comprehend what the charges are? And so people say, yes, I understand the charges. And as soon as you do that, you've already given them jurisdiction, you've already given them authority, and you've already agreed to those charges. So you've already lost. And, you know, it's just designed that way. So you have to know what the words actually mean in law in order to use them properly, in order to write documents properly. So in a way, it is very easy to do the things that I'm talking about. But, you know, it also definitely requires some education. But really, you have to ask yourself, you know, how much longer can we go not knowing about the law? And how much worse is it going to get if we, the people, don't start enforcing the law?
So how do you go about learning and understanding your rights and then being able to apply them? Is that really difficult? And is it a difficult thing to grasp without going to law school?
Well, you know, our rights are very simple, and that part is very easy to grasp. You know, and a common law, which, you know, it's called common law because it's, you know, for the common man, for the common woman. It's relatively simple. You know, due process of law is relatively simple. Like I said, they've overcomplicated law on purpose. Now, part of the way they've done that is with what you call attorneys. Now, attorneys, they're, well, see, it's this whole part of the whole scam, because attorneys are just trained in the bar. And what they do is, see, you don't have to have a license to practice law. It's one of our rights to practice law. So what attorneys are doing is they're doing legalese, and it's all the complicated crap, really, that you don't need. And it's just all overcomplicated stuff, of which they've made it that way on purpose. When the attorney passes the bar exam, they actually swear an oath of fealty to the crown. To the British Crown.
Jeez.
Yeah. So, you know, that's just a fact. So they're already. I
did not know that.
Right. They're not representing. You know, they're not representing your true rights. They're not representing your true power. They're not representing, you know, the constitutional supreme law. They're you know, they're following the processes that are required for them to follow according to the bar. And that's why they refer to the judge as your honor, right? You don't have to refer to the judge as your honor, right? Because the judge works for you, right? The judge is my public servant, right? In fact, it very specifically says in our supreme law that you shan't ever refer to a government official with any reference of nobility whatsoever. So, you know, it just shows you that they're all in bed with each other in, you know, this whole big scam.
No wonder they don't want people to, they try so hard to confuse us, and they do not want us to be empowered to know our rights, to understand, well, to stand under or to get it. So we know where their authority lies, and we really do have the power. It's just that we as people need to reclaim that power and understand how to enforce it and how to apply it. You actually offer free classes, is that right, there at the Garden of Eden?
Yeah, you know, we have gatherings and meetups from time to time where you know, we talk about the law, we talk about our rights, we talk about, you know, most of it really, it's all mental, because what you gotta, it's really hard because we've been raised since children to be scared of authority, you know, to be scared of the police officers and the law, and to, you know, to sort of like, oh God, it's the law. And so we've got this just, you know, mental conditioning that's really hard to break through. And we've been living our whole life where it's like, oh, you know, we have to have a license for everything. Well, you can't license, you know, rights that we already have. So it's, you know, it's all just a bogus sham. Like, you don't have to have a driver's license to travel between space and time. You don't have to have a license plate to operate you know, an automobile.
Right, or pay taxes. We've just bought into this whole system.
Nope, you do not have to pay taxes. You know, it's very, very easy actually to enforce the truth once you know the truth. But you got to get it through your head, and that conditioning is really hardcore. So most of the work really is just sort of like getting it through your head of, oh my God, the whole world I know has been a lie. Mm-hmm. You know, that's the real crazy part.
Well, yeah, and it's scary to think that we have that much power, and all it takes is just one little paradigm shift.
Yep. and that's why I'm doing this interview right now, and that's why I'm doing a lot of other radio interviews, is because it's time. You know, it's time that paradigm shift happens, that people wake up and realize, oh my God, we are the power, because we are the power. And it's been that way since this country was founded. We the people, for the people, by the people, for the people. You know, that's the supreme law of the land, and it always has been, and it always will be. So, you know, we just have to wake up and claim that power and enforce that power, and the whole world changes.
Woo! Well, I'm feeling empowered.
Yeah, well, there's hope.
There is hope. There is something we can do. It really is not too late. It's just we got to get ourselves out of the confusion. Mm-hmm. So, well, Quinn, thank you so much for your time and for everything that you're doing to be self-sustainable and empower others to be sustainable and to kind of be free of the system. Yeah.
Well, you know, I appreciate your appreciation, and, you know, we're doing this for ourselves. We're doing it for everybody else. You know, and, you know, we're not here to change people, and we can't really change people, but there's a lot of awesomeness to potentially tune into here and glean from.
Absolutely. Well, keep in touch. Let us know what's going on over there in the Garden of Eden.
Yeah, keep up the good work. I appreciate it, Leanne.
Thanks, Quinn. All right, well, that is very powerful stuff. You see why it is so important that we all understand our rights and how to exercise them. That's the key there. You can actually learn more about the classes at intothegardenofeden.com. And also, any purchase that you make at the Infowars store will come with a free Citizens Rulebook. In there, you'll learn all about jury trials, your rights as a juror, as well as understanding the Constitution and the Bill of Rights. So go ahead, and any purchase, you can learn how to protect yourself. Thank you so much for watching. Join us here every Monday through Friday at 7 p.m. Central. For the Infowars Nightly News, I'm Leanne McAdoo.